Hey, how's it going, everybody? Ryan Gass here, and wanted to take this time to actually talk a little bit on a subject, and that is how to carry a handgun and not shoot yourself, right? It's become a very popular topic lately, especially with a news story that came out yesterday where a person who happens to be a law enforcement officer had been off duty and had shot himself in the leg. So let's talk a little bit about that, all right? To start off, let's go back over the basic firearms safety rules, all right? First rule being, treat every firearm as if it is what? Loaded, all right? Whether it's loaded or not, you want to treat it as if it is loaded. Now, obviously, when we're carrying our gun, it is going to be loaded, all right? So treat every firearm as if it were loaded, all right? Next rule, never, this is very important, never point a firearm at anything you do not intend to shoot, whether it be yourself, whether it be another person, whether it be an animal, whether it be at your TV. Do not point a firearm at anything you do not intend to shoot. If you don't intend to shoot at it, why are you pointing a firearm at it? Very, very important rule. All right. Also, if you have a safety on your firearm, always keep your firearm on safe until you're ready to fire. And also keep your finger, very important, keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to fire. All right. Why would you put your finger on the trigger if you're not ready to fire? A lot of mistakes happen because people put their finger on the trigger before they are quite ready, while they're pointing their firearm when they shouldn't be at something they did not intend to shoot. That sometimes brings us a conversation of, well, what if I don't carry with one in the chamber? You know, that'd be a lot safer, right? Yes and no. One, why would you carry a firearm without a round in the chamber? Some people use that as a way to, hey, if I make a mistake, and I pull the trigger, the gun won't go off because there's no round in the chamber. But again, that all gets back to how about we just pay attention to the basic firearm safety rules and be conscious of them. It's not, the firearm safety rules are not something to be nervous about and be, have your day taken away from because you're always worried about, am I following the basic firearm safety rules? But it is something you need to be conscious about and be following at all times. It should be something that you practice throughout your training, whether actually in a training course, whether actually on the range, or whether it's something you do at home. Safety has to be paramount at all times, right? Paramount doesn't mean, that you're stressed about it, but it should be something you're always following. If you allow safety to lax at any point in time for any reasons, that's how people accidentally shoot other people. That's how people accidentally shoot themselves. Oh, it's fine, the gun is unloaded, or oh, it's fine, it's just this, or oh, it's fine, I am a firearms instructor, or oh, it's fine, I've been around guns all my life. Some of the safest people in my experience with firearms training, both in the Marine Corps and civilian side, and just outside of that as well, some of the safest people I find are those who have very little experience at all. They're more conscious about what they're doing. They're paying more attention to what they're doing. And on the flip side, some of the most dangerous people I see with firearms are those who've been around them all their lives, or those who are in the military, or those who work in law enforcement, or those who are a firearms instructor. It doesn't matter who you are. Even I am capable of making mistakes. Mistakes happen, but we want to make sure that we are not the ones making the mistakes. We want to make sure that we're not getting lackadaisical and that we're not getting ourselves hurt or killed or somebody else hurt or killed because of our actions, all right? Yes, accidents happen, but they shouldn't happen to you. You shouldn't be perpetuating accidents, all right? We can't control what other people do, all right? We cannot control how other people handle firearms to a certain extent, all right? We can try to educate them and train them and push them in a way to be better and more safe with their firearms, but it doesn't matter if I'm not saying I am, but if I am the greatest fire safety trainer in the world, if I am a trainer at the local police academy, if I'm this or I'm that, and I do the best classes, it doesn't matter because there's always a small minority of people who will ignore the rules or who will get lackadaisical or who will do stupid stuff and it gets themselves or somebody else hurt or killed, right? You need to make sure that one, yourself, but also those around you are conducting themselves and yourself safely whenever you're handling firearms. Firearms are not safe nor unsafe by themselves. That is decided upon by the person who is handling them. All right, if somebody has a firearm accident, people like to say accident. I don't like to call incidents with firearms where someone gets hurt or killed and it wasn't a justified use of force. I don't like to call them accidents because that makes it sound like you had no control over what happened. People get accidentally hurt or killed with firearms because somebody was either ignorant of the rules, they didn't know what the rules were, so they weren't able to follow them because they didn't know what the rules were. This might happen with young kids. This might happen with people that are new to guns and still quite haven't learned or grasped the rules. You're either ignorant of the rules or you're being negligent in your handling of the firearm and you know the rules, right? If you've been to a firearm safety class or multiple firearm safety classes, if you've taught firearm safety classes, if you work in law enforcement, you know the rules. You've been taught the rules multiple times. It's been emphasized to you why it is important to follow those rules and how if you deviate from those, how that can affect your well-being and those of the people around you. So if you have an accident and somebody gets hurt or killed because of your negligence, you should be held responsible for that. People don't like to talk about that. People don't like to talk about, they like to downplay sometimes what happens when somebody, has a firearm accident and somebody gets hurt or killed. Oh, it was because of this, or oh, it was because of that, or it was because of the gun, or it was because of the holster. And ultimately, it comes down again to the person who was handling the firearm and or the person, the adult in the room who can allow that person to have access to that firearm, right? At our classes, we assume that, with our basic handgun classes and our concealed carry classes even, we go into that assuming that the person has no knowledge at all. We're starting with a fresh template. Whether they have experience or not, it doesn't matter to me. I teach everybody the same way. We build you up to the point where you're on the range and you're drawing and shooting. We don't just throw you at that. It takes time and experience. We really have to drive home the basic safety rules. That's why we go, for many of you that have been to our classes or watched our videos online, you see that we harp on the safety rules so damn much because it is that important. There's a reason why they exist. The reason why that the fire safety rules are, if you go to any firearm safety class or you go to any academy, or if you're in any branch of the military, that is the first thing that's taught to you and really driven home before you even get hands-on. Right? So let's talk about that actually in a different sense. Let's talk about it from a carry aspect, whether open carry or concealed carry, because that's how the incident happened. More or less, I'm not going to get into the specifics and name agencies or names, but there was a deputy who was off duty and was at a auto zone, right? That's all I know at this time. I'm sure more information will come out, but that's all I know at this time, right? Off duty, auto zone, and shot themselves in the leg. Right? I've talked to many people this morning, even law enforcement and non-law enforcement. I've talked to some of my fellow instructors. Things that we were discussing and trying to figure out is, one person said, "Hey, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was carrying his gun, and he was working on his car because he's at AutoZone, and it got uncomfortable for what he was doing, so he took the gun off while he was working on his car doing whatever, and then when he went to go put it back in the holster, that's when it happened." But again, a couple things. All right, I've been there. I've done that. What I've made sure to do is that if I'm going to do that, if the gun's uncomfortable on you, like if I am carrying this gun that you see here, right, and I'm working on something and it's uncomfortable, all right, if I simply take the gun out of the holster, notice my finger's off the trigger, if I take my gun out of the holster, right, and I set it in my car, wherever I might set it, all right, this holster is still uncomfortable, right? So what I'd rather do is, and this all comes in your gear too, but I've got a system set up so that I can take this whole gun and holster off, right? The trigger never becomes exposed. And I can take this and set it and secure that while I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And later I can put that back on, right? And back to being safe. Again, at no point in time with this is the trigger exposed. And that's how the gun is going to go off. Whether it's your finger or whether it's a piece of clothing or a part of the holster, maybe the holster is defective and broke, something has to pull that trigger for that gun to go off, right? If we make sure that the trigger is protected and we keep it that way, right, in a proper holster, how's that gun going to go off, right? I can drop this gun on the ground right now. I can throw it, whatnot. This is not going to go off. right? The trigger has to be pulled, but it has to be pulled by something. It doesn't have to be pulled by your finger. Again, if I just throw it in my pocket, all right, a chapstick, a knife, a set of keys can get wedged in there and apply backwards pressure on that trigger, and the gun can go off. So we want to make sure that we protect that trigger, all right? Well, what if it's not outside the waistband? That's easy to say about outside the waistband. What if it's inside the waistband holster? Not all holsters are created the same way, but I also have a inside the waistband holster, right? What I do with this one's made by Bravo Concealment. I had to pop these two clips because the clips come up and over the belt, and then they latch onto the belt. So that if I were to draw the gun by itself, the holster stays there. But if I want the gun and holster to come with it, right, I pop these clips and the firearm with the holster, with the trigger protected, comes out all in one time, right? And if I need to, right, I can then re-holster after I'm done, right? I do not have to take that firearm from the safety and security of that holster. I don't need to take it out in order to handle it or even show the camera or to take it off and secure it while I'm doing something. I can keep it holstered and just take the holster off of my body. Right? If your holster doesn't do that, maybe you want to find a different holster. Because you might say, well, my holster doesn't do that. Well, then maybe you need to find different gear. Not saying better gear, all right? Because that's a matter of opinion, all right? But different gear, all right? Not all gear is made for all people and all guns. And that's another thing that we want to talk about too. We want to make sure that we're using a holster that's made specifically for that gun. Don't try to, wheel and deal. Don't try to, I'll just make it work. Because making it work is how you, again, sometimes accidentally shoot yourself or someone else. Accidentally, right? Like earlier, before I was preparing for this video, I went to go put this holster on, and I thought it was for actually a Glock 17 and a Glock 19. It's not. It's only for a Glock 19. So I couldn't use my Glock 17 because the slide is a little bit too long, and when I put it into the holster, the trigger guard was exposed, and the trigger was exposed, and it made it unsafe. Right? So I identified that and I didn't use it in that manner. Right? So you need to be able to recognize and identify those and correct that before it becomes an actual bigger issue. When you hold that firearm, let's work with the appendix gun right now. All right? So I'm appendix carrying a Glock 19, a Bravo Concealment holster. Right? When I'm grabbing hold of that firearm, right, my finger notices up near that frame. Right? Yes, it's touching my belt buckle because it can't get to the frame right now. I got the buckle, my shorts, and the holster in between, right? But as I draw that gun, where does that finger end up at? On the frame, not near that trigger, right? And guess what? When I go to reholster, guess what? Tuck my little belly back in, right? Make sure that firearm is not having any type of, clothing or anything like that is going to get caught inside that trigger guard. Because notice how I get my shirt out of the way, right? Nothing is getting inside that trigger guard as I'm reholstering, right? Nothing's getting that trigger guard as I'm drawing either. I want to keep it clear and free at all times, right? Obviously much easier. I have my outside the waistband holster, right? When I go to draw that gun, same thing. I'm going to make sure that finger's off that frame, off that trigger onto that frame until I am out of my target and ready to fire, right? Not one, not the other, but both. Pointed toward a target in a safe direction, and I'm ready to fire. If you're applying pressure, if your finger's on that trigger, if it's touching that trigger, it is either applying pressure or releasing pressure. Oh, well, I'm done shooting, or I wasn't quite ready to shoot yet. Then why is your finger on the trigger? Keep it on the frame until you are ready to fire. Not, I think I might need to fire soon. Not, oh, I'm reholstering in the AutoZone parking lot, which I'm not saying that's what happened. Your finger only goes on that trigger when you are ready to pull that trigger. All right. We see way too many times throughout the United States, both average everyday citizens, concealed carriers, and some people that work in professions like law enforcement or military, where they make simple, stupid mistakes, and it costs them. Right. It costs them a shot in the leg. It costs them possibly death or serious bodily harm. Outside of that, it might cost them because they shot somebody else. I couldn't imagine if I was negligent with my firearm or any firearm and I hurt or killed somebody else. I couldn't imagine what that would feel like. It's one thing if you screw up and you shoot yourself, that's one thing, and that's not anything you would ever want to do. But I couldn't imagine if I did that and it hurt somebody else. And that's what you got to be worried about at all times, is not only your safety, but the safety of those around you. All right, this is something that's easily said, in front of a camera and on classrooms and at the range and stuff. But it's one of those things that it's one of those things you really got to pay attention to and do consistently every day. Anytime you handle a firearm, make sure you're handling it safe. Make sure you're handling it, you're following the basic firearm safety rules. Safety is everyone's responsibility, right? When somebody makes a grave mistake like that and gets himself or somebody else hurt or killed, it affects a lot more people than just that person, right? In some way, shape, or form, it'll affect the person that trained them, or the group that trained them, or the company that trained them. It'll affect their, fellow gun carriers, because now all the anti-gun community looks at them and say, "Hey, look, see, a good guy with a gun shot himself with a gun." It affects, if you work in a profession like that, it'll affect your shift partners or your fire team and whatnot. Firearm safety is everyone's responsibility. We need to take this serious at all points in time. Yeah, we can laugh and joke a little bit about this stuff. For those that are on the receiving end, if you shot yourself, you may not be able to laugh that same day or the next week, but eventually you'll be able to laugh at yourself and move on past it. But you need to, at all points in time, we need to make sure that we avoid the fact that ever happened in the first place. These are very serious mistakes that can lead to someone losing their life. And that's why we have to make safety paramount at all times. If you guys get a chance, we actually have a episode coming out on the Rock Podcast Nation. It's coming out soon. We're actually going to be talking to a former law enforcement officer who also is a former instructor for law enforcement officers and a current instructor for law enforcement officers. And he is going to have a discussion with me about this topic and about how this happens all too often and how it is avoidable. We're going to talk about this, and I want to include you in that conversation. So if you have any questions that I could pose to him that you guys are wondering about, let me know. Put that in the comments below. Also, if you have not done so already, go ahead and subscribe to the PTPGun.com Firearms Training YouTube channel. Links in the description below. Thank you all again. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Have you ever had a firearms safety incident? Have you ignored the safety rules and somebody got hurt or killed? Do you know somebody who had? Thank you all again. Stay safe, and looking forward to seeing you all more in the future.